Welcome to part 2 of the Q&A. I have to give my dog pets occasionally or she'll start to whine, but hopefully she'll be okay. Oh my goodness. But this morning I had asked you guys to leave some questions in my Instagram inbox so that I can address it in this video. I took some screenshots on my iPad. And if you're looking for some of the basic information about my background and where I came from, that has already been done in part 1. So we're just going to jump straight into some of these hopefully incredible, challenging questions. This is my first time going through them, so let's see what you guys got. The first one, what can you say to someone who constantly doubts their ability to achieve their goal? That's a really great question, actually. We're starting off real strong. I think that I would say to you that's very normal, right? And I want you to be assured that there's not something wrong with you inherently. That's a very human emotion that we feel. We are constantly filled with doubts and second guesses because we know ourselves better than anyone else does. So all of our insecurities are heightened within us and amplified within us, and sometimes it's really difficult to escape those thoughts. And so what's the opposite of doubt? And the question right next to it actually answers that. And that question is, how do you build confidence, right? So the opposite of self-doubt maybe is confidence. How do you build confidence? You have an undeniable stack of proof that you are exactly who you say that you are. And so as we tackle on these massive goals in our lives, you'll begin to realize that they take an incredible amount of consistency and discipline. And sometimes if you haven't developed those things, it's very, very difficult to achieve those massive goals. So as you fail to achieve them, it's this negative circle. It's a feedback loop. You see that you failed, your confidence dwindles, and as you tackle on a future challenge, you don't have the confidence necessarily to succeed there. You'll fail again, and then it'll repeat all over again. And so when you are talking about the fact that you constantly doubt your ability to achieve a goal, maybe it's not the doubt that we address first, it's the goal. What is the goal that you're setting for yourself? Shiva, come here. You cannot eat that. What is the goal that you're trying to achieve for yourself? If you are saying something along the lines of, in 30 days, I'm going to try and lose 50 pounds, right? Or I'm going to try to get only A's throughout the period of 30 days, and you've never gotten an A before. Those are massive goals, right? It's what you need to do is start taking those massive goals and breaking them down to a level of micro goal, if you will, that is feasible, that you look at and you can maybe even laugh at because you recognize how easy it is to achieve it. But that's where you start. Because once you start successfully accomplishing those micro goals, you continue to build on them. And then eventually you'll find yourself closer to those massive goals that you originally wanted than you've ever been before. Let me give you a very practical example of this. If you have this goal of, I want to be an incredible partner for my significant other, a very admirable goal, right? You have to recognize a step underneath that. Maybe consider what your partner doesn't like. Okay, I'm very disorganized, and that makes me not dependable, and I know my significant other wouldn't like that. So maybe that's something you want to address. So now you want to become very orderly. That's still a pretty massive goal, okay? For someone that maybe has never been organized in your life, for you to just expect that that's going to happen, maybe unrealistic. So maybe you break that down even further. Okay, how small can I think? All right, well, my room is really messy. Maybe I start there. Actually, I don't even clean my room that often. I do it in such sporadic events in my life that maybe that's even too massive of a goal to take on. Then you go even further down and you say, all right, I can make my bed every morning because I make my bed pretty often, but not every single day. That's where I'll start. You make your bed every single day, then you give yourself a time frame. I'm going to make my bed every single day for 7 days straight. Every single day, you're going to do that. And say you succeed after 7 days, you're going to have done two things for yourself. You're going to build a level of confidence because you've shown yourself that you're actually able to follow through with your promises long after the mood in which you originally set that promise in has subsided. That's number one. Number two, you build positive momentum moving forward, so the subsequent tasks that you try to take on will be easier to achieve than if you hadn't accomplished the initial goal. That's how you address your question. You start really small. You build confidence with very small goals. You continue to build on that, and so if you're familiar with training, there's a term called progressive overload. It's very similar to that. You expand your boundaries. You push on your boundaries little by little each time with these additional goals that you'll follow, that you'll pursue after you've done the initial goal at hand. That's how you do it. And that's also how you build confidence. There's this, I'll even call it unhealthy desire to only care about massive jumps and massive progress in your life. But that's so rare. And even if it does happen, right, there's a lot of luck involved in that. It's not sustainable. You want to progress as a human being, you take small steps and you understand the importance of those small steps and you continuously build upon those, and that's your answer to that question. Hopefully that helps. I'm currently having a lot of trouble in my class and I don't want to fail. Should I drop the class? What do I do? You listen to me very carefully, okay? School, just as much as it teaches you important technical skills, the soft skills that you can learn from school with the correct mindset is invaluable, is just as important, and in my opinion, more important than the technical skills. What do I mean by this? One of the soft skills that you need to develop is a level of resilience. Resilience is hard. What is resilience? That's when you've constantly been fronted with challenges as you pursue an endeavor, but you don't give up on that endeavor. You take those in stride and you problem solve and you continue to press forward because you will not be denied. That's resiliency. And the difficult classes that you're taking right now, I know this isn't a popular piece of advice. I know a lot of people will probably say, oh, just drop the class. Go ahead and drop the class so it doesn't affect your GPA. The 0.03 droppage that'll happen in your GPA if you get a C in the class, I promise you will be outweighed by the resiliency that you can build if you continue to press forward. It's not so much about the GPA, especially if you're in secondary school. It doesn't matter exactly what that score says. It's about more of the character that you've developed, and of course, having a good GPA that you can complement the two. But I promise you, if you expect in higher education that those classes will always be easy and you'll always have an option to drop them, you are out of your mind. That's not the case. That's simply not the case. You have to understand that you need to go through these difficult classes. I talk about it all the time. Embrace the difficulty. Embrace it, because you'll learn so much from that experience. Okay, so right now, your responsibility is to take that thought of dropping the class out of your head. What you need to do is look for resources, is to network, whether it's with your friends or whether it's with TAs or professors, or whether that's with a tutor, whether that's with your parents, whatever the case may be. Your responsibility is to seek out new methods and new resources that you can utilize so that you can perform better. Are you going to all the office hours that your teacher has? If not, then you should take that thought out of your mind about dropping it. You haven't done everything yet. Are you hearing what I'm saying? It's when you can combine the resiliency that you build while doing the things that you don't necessarily like to do with a future opportunity that you are genuinely excited about, that you become a powerhouse. So it's so important that you don't run away from these difficult classes. It's so important that you stick through it, that you continue to problem solve. And I promise you, once those inevitable, difficult obstacles come along with some of these incredible opportunities in your future, you won't back down. You'll say to yourself, I've been here. I've done that. I've been uncomfortable. I've faced difficult classes. I've failed. I've got horrible test scores over and over and over again, and I still persevered. This is nothing for me, right? For example, when I was in high school, I took AP Physics, right? And man, did that kick my tail, to say the very least. I remember my very first exam score was close to a 58 or 62%, right? It was borderline failing. Actually, that was probably failing in an AP class. But that certainly had a defeating element to it. Like, I didn't look at that grade and immediately say, oh, it doesn't matter. I took that pretty darn seriously, right? I took it home, though, and I stopped feeling bad about myself and said, all right, what can I change? Okay, there's something about my study techniques that wasn't working well for a physics class. I started to experiment. I went back to the drawing board and figured out a different method, a different approach moving forward. And so once I did that, once I started to seek out new resources, my second test was, I think, a 65%, 66%. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, well, there's a little bit more to work with now. I know that I've done a little bit better, right? Let's continue to build on the things that worked well and start to change up the things that didn't do well. Don't take it so personal. And by the end of the term, I think I finished with an A-. I started to excel in the second half of the course because started to see some of the concepts differently because I worked with it for so much longer, right? Because I was forced to spend so much more time with the material. When the second half of the term came around, I started to have some things click in my mind. And then my grade increased as a result. But I learned so much from that class. Sure, I learned about vectors, right? That's cool too, but I can't tell you how difficult it was to wake up 3, 4 a.m. and study an extra hour or two every single day for that physics class. I can take that extra hour or two that I have available now and work on my company on the side. I can build my social media platforms on the side and have no problem with it, right? Because I've already dealt with the difficulty. Don't run away from difficult classes. And I promise you, also, resiliency is a skill that gets better with the more experiences that you have. So just because you've gone through one difficult class, that's great. Do another one. Do another one. Do another one. And I promise you, as you start to expand that, as you start to expand your boundaries in terms of what's possible, you're going to develop the soft skills necessary to tack on ginormous goals in the future. Do you get me? How do you balance everything so well and have so much success? You know what troubles me sometimes? Adults, right? Well, people that are so far removed from being our age is they think that we don't have a lot of responsibilities, right? And I guarantee all of you watching this video right now will at least share some of these responsibilities. You have school, you have hobbies, you have relationships, you have your family, you have a social life. At least those 5, right? That's a lot. That's a lot. And it's a whole nother thought to try and have success in all those 5 things. And so when I got into college and I started to seek out even more responsibilities aside from the main 5, right? Because I also have to consider my faith, my relationship with God, because that takes time to build. I have to consider wanting to start a business on the side. That takes time to build. I have to consider wanting to do social media on the side. That takes time to build. And I remember when I was considering doing all of this at once, people would say that's unrealistic or that it'll distract me from doing well in school. And I can tell you 4 years in and having all the success that I've been fortunate to have in every single aspect, I can tell you it's possible, right? But where does it start? And I'll tell you where it started for me. Maybe this can help you. You look at your handful of responsibilities. Which one causes you the most amount of anxiety? Which one is a non-negotiable, meaning you don't have a choice to drop it, right? Like you can take away from some of the other responsibilities, but this one you have to go through. Are you thinking right now? Because for most of us, I assume it's school. The interesting part about schools is they tell you what to learn, but they don't tell you how to learn, which is bizarre because there's been so much research done on the proper techniques to utilize in your learning. And so what happens is you start spending way too much time with school that you're not able to allocate to all of your other endeavors or all of your other responsibilities, right? And that's a problem because you start sacrificing the things that you enjoy. And so what I'll tell you changed my life completely is when I did a full deep dive into the literature, right? And I was very fortunate that I've been exposed to publications and how to read them and how to read statistics because my major has taught me those things. And so as I took a deep dive into the literature, I'm looking at a lot of these studies and I'm saying, okay, these are things I should certainly try. At the very least, I should start to experiment with. And now I've gotten to the point, trust me, it doesn't happen overnight, especially in my case when I didn't have someone teaching me these things in real time. I had to do my own research. After figuring it out, after developing a system that really worked well for me, I was able to completely decrease the amount of time that I was studying while still maintaining really good grades. And actually, I got to the point where I was having even better grades than I had before. And then I started to also have all this time to allocate to my other endeavors. And that's probably the route that you should take as well, right? The non-negotiable, the one responsibility that causes a lot of anxiety for many of us is school. Do school more effectively, more efficiently. And I promise you it's possible, right? The 4 principles that I talk about all the time are active recall, spaced repetition, interleaving, and utilizing optimal breaks or optimized breaks, right? I talk about those 4 principles all the time. And the Guide to Academic Success will go through all 4 of those things. And the pre-order for that starts next Friday, but even if you don't want to read my guide, right? I urge you to do your own research. I urge you to go through the literature. And I promise you, you'll start to find techniques. And it's funny when I say techniques that work well for me, I think that every technique has a level of tailoring to each individual's preference, but you got to understand that these techniques have been studied across a ton of individuals, right? It's not just, oh, it worked for Joe, it might work for you. Like, it's proven to have work for a ton of individuals. It has a good chance of working for you as well. And you don't have to make it more complex than that, right? And so within those 4 principles, there's different applications underneath each of them, right? Like actual practical ones. It's one thing to understand the concepts, but how to apply them, those are the applications. And in the Guide to Academic Success, we go over the 4 main principles. We talk about the science. We talk about what they are. Then we talk about a ton of different application points for each of them that you can easily apply. But that's where I would start. If you're thinking about balancing as a student, that one that you should focus on how to do more efficiently, that you'll then be able to utilize your other time to pursue other endeavors is school. That should be the main focus. And then also in the Guide to Academic Success, we talk about productivity techniques, because then you start to recognize the need to manage your time better, right? Now that you have increased time to pursue other endeavors, how do you actually utilize those increases in bandwidth for successful pursuits? We'll go over all of that, but that's where I think it starts from. If you're trying to balance it, try and figure out a way to do school more efficiently. How do you stay motivated all the time? Well, I don't. That's the simple answer to that. And actually, there's quite a few of the questions that have a similar meaning as that. So maybe this is a good spot to address this. What you have to understand, right, when people talk about motivation and they talk about inspiration, is that these are based on emotions. What do we know about emotions? They ebb and flow. And if you're basing the trajectory of your life on emotions, then you're in for a very rough ride. So what you're looking for isn't motivation or inspiration. Trust me, it's incredible when you have it, but man, does that not last for very long, right? For example, that's why, unfortunately, a lot of people, when they first start out in the new year, there's a ton of hype of going to the gym regularly. So if you've been in a gym from the months of January through April, it's a lot busier, right? And then it starts to quickly slow down by May. Now why? It's because the emotions had run out. Now you're not going to actually get any big change in your life by doing this, right? You're not going to get any big change in your life by working on something for half the time, a quarter of the time that you've promised yourself, right? You've promised yourself for the new year, for 12 months, you're going to pursue the gym, and you've only been in there for 3 months or 4 months and you've given up. You apply that to a lot of goals in your life, there's going to be more failures than you'd like, right? And that also breaks my heart, because we've all been beginners, right? In the gym. And you have to understand that it's not easy to sustain it. And when I see people give up so early, I'm thinking, oh, you were right there. Like, you were so close, you know? The gym is all about consistency. It's all about finding that rhythm. And the moment you break that rhythm, the moment you break that consistency, it's very hard to get back into the gym. And so when you're thinking about how to achieve goals, which I'm assuming is the reason why you asked that, it's not about inspiration, motivation. It's great to have it, but you don't need it. What you need is a level of discipline. What you need is a level of consistency. Denzel Washington actually said something very fascinating, and it sticks to me till this day, and it's, if you don't have discipline, you'll never start. And if you don't have consistency, you'll never finish. That's beautifully put, right? That's fantastic. Now, I'll take it a step further than that. I believe that it's much more important to figure out your purpose, right? That's what I believe. I believe that's the layer underneath the idea of discipline. It's figuring out your why. Why do you do what you do? Perspective drives performance every day of the week. The way that you view what you do affects how you do what you do. The way that you view what you do affects how you do what you do. And a lot of us haven't even gone through the process of figuring that out because it's very uncomfortable. To figure out why you exist in the first place, that's uncomfortable. But that purpose can be different from everyone. But it needs to be, in my opinion, something greater than you. Because if everything that you do is for you, you're quickly going to run into something that's bigger than you, and you're not going to be able to overcome it. And so in my experience, in my belief, my purpose is glorifying and enjoying God forever, right? It's about utilizing all the opportunities that He's blessed me with, because truly it's a blessing. I don't deserve any of this stuff, but God has blessed me with it, is to utilize those blessings and to maximize it, for not for selfish reasons, but for reasons to glorify Him, right? That's my purpose. So when I'm going through some really difficult times, and I promise you, as much as I like to smile, as much as I put out positive content, I'm a human being. So I go through feelings of doubts, insecurities. I go through some really tough times with family, with relationships, with work, with school. But I think back to my purpose, and it drives me. It reminds me that, okay, this is much bigger than I. June, you're not that big of a deal. June, you're a little bit full of yourself. You think it matters that you're feeling a little down on yourself right now? You think it matters that you've embarrassed yourself with a bad grade? You think it matters that... I remember when I was playing sports, I played soccer, and I would train so hard, and people would question why I would train so hard. And I remember when I let up a very silly goal, right? A very silly goal. Because I played goalkeeper. If you didn't know, I know that I've spoken about that before, but I played goalie, and I let up a really silly goal. And man, I don't know why I was so hard on myself. I was thinking, that's so embarrassing. I couldn't put my head up, and I had to realize, June, you're not that big of a deal. Your failures, your embarrassment really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Get it together. Right? Understand that you don't play the game for yourself. You don't play the game to look cool. You play the game to glorify God. You've committed to that. So figure out how to get better at your sport. And that's why I work so hard, because I picked up the sport way later than any of my friends. So I needed to put in the extra time. I needed to put in the extra effort. And so I did. Have a purpose. Live your life with intention. Stop letting life just come to you. Stop letting life just punch you and smack you around and throw you around, and you not actually having a say in the direction your future goes. That's a horrible way to live, in my opinion. And so I would highly consider looking at your life with a level of intention. Now, how do you do that? And that's a really great question. How do you look at your life with more intention? Well, you have to recognize that life is filled with distractions, and when throughout your day do you have the most amount of control? Usually in the mornings, right? In the mornings, you're in your bed, you're in your room, you got some space. You got some space around you physically, but also mentally. And so I would recommend you first meditate, right? I meditate on the word, but you can meditate however you'd like. And try and go through the practice of clearing your mind. What do I mean by this? Well, if you do any guided meditations, a lot of them, or any non-sleep deep rest protocols, a lot of them are about bringing your attention back, your focus back, because your focus tends to wander. And when you can bring it back, you have a little bit more mindfulness. You have a little bit more control of where your mind is going. Once you do that, then go into a period of reflection. Go into a journaling session and physically write down the things that you have going on in your life, the things that you're happy about, the things that you're not happy about. Work on the things that you want to work on. Figure out ways to build on your successes. Change some of the things that haven't worked so well for you. If you can do that, you can carve out a period of time where you are intentional with everything in your life. Then as you walk out of the door, you have that level of awareness, right? Life isn't just controlling you. You have a say in the things that you do, right? That's a great starting point. So hopefully, again, that was a long-winded answer, but I think it was such a good question that I needed to kind of go really in depth with it. But thank you for that question. Everyone around me seems to be ditching me like so often, and I want to avoid it, but it still hurts. Great question. And a lot of questions were about friends, especially in school. That's a tough situation to handle, and I've gone through my fair share of these issues. I can tell you right now that the friend group that I had in high school is not the friend group that I had going into college. I can tell you right now that the friend group that I had my first 2 years of college is not the friend group that I have now. And actually, in fact, not only has it decreased in terms of the quantity of individuals, because it's become more of a close-knit, very much a few people type of group, but it's also decreased in the issues like this, in terms of feeling left out, in terms of feeling misunderstood, in terms of the jealousy or the gossiping or the negativity. All of that has also decreased. Now, that didn't just magically happen. It had to be intentional on my end with the people that I want to surround myself with. So listen to me very closely. I think it's a 4-step process here. Maybe we'll end the video on this just because I gave such long-winded answers to everything. But first, have an awareness of the negativity around you. You've done that, it seems. Number 2, be okay removing yourself from the negativity. But removing yourself from the negativity doesn't mean that you're rude, right? It certainly doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean you talk bad about people. It doesn't mean that you think you're too good for people. No, it's just an understanding that everyone has different value systems, and the value system that you have for yourself has started to differ from the people around you, and so you're stepping away. You still be courteous. You still say hi. You still give them a smile. You still be a good human being, but if they ask you to hang out on the weekends, you tell them, actually, I'm working on X, Y, and Z, and I need time to dedicate to these passion projects. I need time to dedicate to these relationships. I can't do it this weekend, right? That's how you step away from the level of negativity. Number 3, this is the part that you probably don't necessarily like to hear, and that's you have to be alone for a little while. You just do, right? You have to enter this self-healing, this self-discovery journey, and it can be scary at first. And maybe even in this point, it can hurt, as you've put it, but it's necessary, because when you don't have all these distractions around you, and that's what negative people eventually become, they're a distraction, you'll have so much more freedom. You'll have so much free time and energy and space. And with those 3 things that are now available to you that you once didn't have before, it's your responsibility to utilize them to develop the skills that you've always wanted to develop, to become your most attractive self, to try and pursue some of these passions that you've wanted to pursue. Maybe this is the time. I know that we all have these inner voices inside of us, and I point to my heart, I point to my soul, right? I point to my stomach, I point right here, because it's always been a calling inside me. I've always known it. It's a gut feeling that I was to do more than what I was surrounded by when I was younger. I knew that I wanted to start a business. I knew that I wanted to make influential decisions so that I could have a positive impact on people. I knew that there was a point in my life that was just different from what I was experiencing. Now, for me, it was, hey, I want you to be a scientist. I want you to be a business owner. I want you to be a social media individual. I had these thoughts, but for you, it could be you should be a lawyer. You should be a singer. You should be a writer. You should be an artist. You should be a doctor. Whatever the case may be for you, everyone has these inner voices inside of them, but we tend to ignore it because it seems unrealistic. And actually, the reason why it feels unrealistic is because the people around you that have also suppressed this inner voice inside of them don't want you to actually touch that, don't want you to actually act on it because it'll make them feel bad about their decision to suppress it. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so, with that new freedom that you have, pursue that. Do that. Go ahead. It's going to be challenging, but do it. And once you've done the things necessary to make you a high-value individual, then number 4 is probably the beautiful aspect of things, and that's you become the magnet. You become the magnet in which like-minded people come together and grow. A beautiful aspect, right? Now, that doesn't mean that just people are going to start knocking at your door and say, oh, June, like I heard you're on this self-discovery journey. Can I join? Maybe, but probably not likely. It's your responsibility to put yourself in environments that you know other high-value individuals could likely be at. And so if you're in school, you join clubs. If you're out of school, maybe seminars. Whatever the case may be, whatever event it may be, because you'll be carrying yourself with so much confidence, you'll look different to people. Even if you don't feel it, and you probably will feel it when you get to that point, you carry yourself differently. And that's very attractive, right? That's attractive to employers, that's attractive to coworkers, that's attractive to friends, that's attractive to future potential spouses, whatever the case may be. It's very attractive. And then you become the magnet in which people come together and grow. And so I understand we all go through friendship issues, right? But if you decide right now to settle for the people around you, right? The people that are treating you horribly, you just told me that they're treating you horribly, and you continue to stick around. And I'm not talking about giving people a second chance. Everyone deserves a second chance. I'm not saying that. This sounds like repetitive behavior, right? And you've given them a lot of chances, and you've still found yourself in a place where you're not able to grow. You got to step away. You got to enter that 4-step process. You've gone through step 1, go through the remaining 3, and I promise you, that's how you actually make a difference in your life. If you start to settle for the people around you, you start to settle once you get older. Once you get into college, you're going to settle for people because you're accustomed to settling. If you realize, hey, these are boundaries. I'm only going to surround myself with quality people. That's a standard I have for myself. It's likely that you'll do that in the future as well, okay? I'm trying to wake up early in the mornings now, but am having a difficult time. Can you help? Absolutely, right? Now, I am of the belief that everyone has natural fluctuations of energy throughout the day, right? So some people, and I consider this a peak window, that's how I talk about it. And so it's usually a time frame of 90 minutes, maybe 3 hours, where you are at a heightened level of focus. Sometimes, for me, that's in the morning. But for other people, it could be right after you had lunch, or it could be at night. Whatever the case is, you got to figure out ways to maximize your peak window of energy and focus. Usually that's by delegating the tougher tasks to that. But then you have to consider also your sleeping arrangements, right? And so I'm not going to be here and say, oh, you have to start waking up early in the morning just because it's worked for me. But if you are in this mindset that you do want to wake up early but don't know where to start, then I can surely help you, right? Stop thinking so much about the waking up aspect, right? Because that's the least of your worries. The hardest part is everything else you do throughout your day to set you up to the point that you have the energy necessary to wake up in the morning. What do I mean by that? Well, for starters, if you're sleeping really late, it's hard to wake up early in the morning. You should at least be getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep depending on how old you are. So If that's not the case and that's not happening, then it's really tough to wake up early in the morning. But there's more to that, right? Are you eating dinners a lot later at night? Then you're probably not able to sleep as well throughout the night, right? You need time to digest that food. Similarly, could you start training a little bit earlier in the day so that you are utilizing your physical energy and so you're tired by the time you go to bed? Are you drinking caffeine around 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and you're trying to go to bed by 9 p.m.? Maybe also not the best use of that, right? Are you hearing me? Like, there are parameters within a day that you need to do a better job of controlling and optimizing so that you can actually wake up early in the morning. Now, I also know that even though I say that type of general principle or general understanding, you guys always want specific recommendations. So try night alarms. Changed my life. Try night alarms. What are night alarms? Have 2 of them. Have 2 night alarms. The first one is going to signal to you to wrap up any late night conversations, any movies that you're watching, any work tasks. It's going to signal for you to close all of those things out and initiate the transition into your night routine. And so then you go brush your teeth, you go wash your face, you go shower, whatever you gotta do. Then you have a second alarm that tells you to turn off any electronics, right? Because there's something with electronic screens that will stimulate your brain and have a harder time getting you quality sleep. And so once that second signal goes off, that second alarm goes off, in your head, everything is put away. And so now you've already gone through the process of allowing yourself to transition into your sleep state. You've also cut out distractions and external stimulation so that you can have quality sleep. And that's the goal, right? If you do that, you have a better chance of waking up in the morning feeling a lot more rested. Another practical tip that I give you is in the mornings, get a cold shower in. It changes everything. And I know it sucks so much, but it really does wake you up like nothing that you could do otherwise. I highly encourage you to literally just step into a cold shower for 2 to 3 minutes, and it'll do a really good job of waking you up. And also, I understand though that in the beginning, when you are transitioning from a night person into a morning person, that you will feel fatigue throughout the day. But don't allow yourself to take naps, especially in that beginning phase, because if you take naps in the middle of your day, you're gonna not be as tired at night. It's gonna be hard for you to fall asleep. So it's probably gonna suck for the first week or so, but you'll be able to adapt to this new schedule that you have, and you won't feel so tired in the middle of your day. And so those are probably the recommendations that I got for you. So night alarms, try a cold shower in the morning. If that's too extreme for you, I mean, that's the whole point. It's supposed to be extreme, and that's the reason why it works. But if you want something a little bit more tame, just wash your face with cold water. And then try not to, for that first phase where it's going to be really hard to take naps throughout your day. Try to keep yourself up, and at the very least, for that first week, be very strict on yourself so that you are actually able to go to sleep at night properly and get good quality sleep. That would be my answer in terms of how to start waking up earlier. Hopefully that helps. What is the smartest way to remember all the topics or remember all the information? There's a concept, and we just talked about it within my 4 principles that I mentioned. It's the second one, that's spaced repetition. And basically, there's something called the forgetting curve, right? And what that means is, if you know what an exponential decay function looks like, that's what your forgetting curve resembles, right? And so research suggests in some scenarios, you can lose up to 70% of newly learned information in just 24 hours. And that continues to happen. And so if you are having trouble remembering things, there's nothing wrong with you, okay? There's nothing wrong with you. It's just the way that you're going about your studying. For example, many of us love to nail down a concept, and it's funny because there's an illusion of knowing happening. You don't actually master that content. But you think that you do if you study it really hard for one day, and then you move on to the next subject, then you move on to the next subject, you don't touch that subject till that class comes back around, maybe in a week from now. Then you were like, oh, why don't I remember any of that information? Oh, now I just feel stupid. Oh, now I feel behind everyone else. But that's not true. It's just because the forgetting curve, the science has proven that you're going to forget this information if you don't touch it, if you don't actually engage with it on a more frequent basis, right? But then how do you know when to touch the material again? How do you know when to engage with the material again? Well, here's the thing, right? There's something called desirable difficulty, right? And that just means that the harder you have to work to retain information, the better it stays encoded, the better it gets encoded, I should say, into your memory. And so you want to actually touch the material right as you forget the material, if that makes sense. Now, the Guide to Academic Success will show this in a graph, and we'll be able to go over some of the applications for it. But spaced repetition is your answer. You're going to spread out your learning. You're going to engage with the material over a span of time, several events within that frame, right? Now you're probably thinking, oh, that's not realistic. I don't have enough time. Well, listen to me here, right? You have to look at it with a wider lens. Because if you take the first approach that I mentioned, which is the approach that all of us probably intuitively take, and that's trying to master a piece of information before moving on to the next one, the issue comes around with these cumulative exams, right? Then you have to spend, another week studying that material again because you've forgotten it all. With spaced repetition, what happens is you start to widen the intervals between each study session the more the material becomes familiar, and each time you revisit the material, the higher baseline you have, so you don't actually spend as much time in those study sessions. Does that make sense? Again, it's hard to do without a visual in front of me, but what I'm trying to tell you is this method, when executed effectively, when executed correctly, you're not studying more. You're actually studying significantly less. Because by the time exam sessions come around, you're just going to spend maybe a day to revise the material for an hour or 2 hours, and you'll be good. Because you've done all the maintenance required previously. And plus, you will do a better job of deepening your understanding of the concept. So again, the spaced repetition concept, the active recall principle, the interleaving, as well as optimized breaks, along with personal advice, along with productivity techniques, because now that you've decreased the time that you're spending on school, you need to figure out how to manage your time so you can have success in all these other endeavors. Productivity techniques is important for that. We're going to cover that. That's its own entire section within the guide. Then we go over resume writing and interview tips, because if you're an individual that don't see the advantages of an internship, you're out of your mind, right? Because they're so important nowadays, with the fact that online resources have made it so much easier to gain access to certificates or even degrees. You need to figure out a way to differentiate yourself. Having an internship does that, but a lot of people don't know how to write a resume. A lot of people don't know how to do interviews. I go over all of that. So all of that's going to be covered. It's over 50 pages long. The Guide to Academic Success, the pre-order is set to release next Friday, and I hope that you're super excited for it. The pricing within the United States and most countries will be $45 USD. And then for select countries like India and Pakistan, it'll be $35 USD because the buying power isn't as high within those countries. And I think that you guys will really enjoy it, right? And it's funny because originally the prices were dictated by your opinion. I had spoken to many of you through calls, and I was trying to figure out a good price point. And many of you guys that I've worked with personally understand the value of this and have told me to make it a lot higher than that. But again, I don't think a lot of people can afford that if I make it $100 plus. So I brought it all the way down. I halved the pricing and made it even cheaper for those in this select countries. So I hope that you enjoyed it. And plus, like, in the United States, we're spending $300 a term on a singular textbook, and then I have like 3-4 classes, so you can imagine how much that scales in terms of pricing. So 3 or 4 classes that actually need textbooks, the other ones you can probably find online versions of it, and then that's tough, right? That's a lot of money. Now, the Guide to Academic Success is something that you're going to be able to apply for every single class. I think it'll be worth it. So I'm super excited to get that out to you guys. Thank you guys for making this a reality in terms of actually wanting it, in terms of supporting it. And actually, you guys are the ones that came up with the idea in the first place. So God bless you all. Sheba, you want to say goodbye to them? No, you're sleeping? Well, that's okay. Oh my gosh, she's so cute. Have an incredible day. I love this family so much. And I promise you, I've made a commitment that I'm going to watch every single one of you succeed. I'm going to see it with my own eyes that all of you guys succeed. And I can't wait for that to happen. I'm so blessed that I get to witness your guys' journey up close and personal. So you're powerful beyond measure, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.